everyone, it's Marion here. Today I want to talk about my labor and delivery story. I loved watching these. I really liked watching these when I was pregnant. I found them really helpful. Sometimes, if anything bad happened to somebody, I didn't want to know because I was overwhelmed by information. And so there was a time in my pregnancy, especially towards the end, where I only wanted to hear positive experiences. But I also went through a time when I wanted to hear all sorts of experiences, just to be more prepared. So I would say overall my labor and delivery story was, it was mostly positive, but there were definitely some bumps along the road. So I think it's really important to share this because I do feel like there's a huge part of the labor and delivery story that nobody talks about, and I felt so uninformed about it, and the whole time that I was going through what I was going through, I just kept thinking, I wish somebody had told me that this could happen, because I really had no idea that this could happen. So just to get into the relevant different parts. So just to jump into it, I actually gave birth on my due date, which I think they said happens in 4% of cases, something really rare. So I got lucky there. We had a storm that weekend, and apparently that triggers labor. That's what my gynecologist said, and all the nurses, they were like, yeah, we've been really full ever since the thunderstorm, which is really weird. But basically, that weekend, Friday night, my baby was born Monday. Friday night, I was feeling pretty good. I texted my friend and was like, let's go out Sunday for dinner. Let's do something. I'm so sick of sitting around the house. And then Saturday morning, I messaged her and canceled. I was like, never mind. I'm feeling horrible. And I just felt really ill Saturday and Sunday. I didn't know that I was going into labor. I just felt I couldn't get off the couch. I was really tired and kind of sick and just really not feeling well. And then that sort of progressed into what I thought might be contractions. I had the bloody show or whatever, so I was like, okay, it's happening soon. And then I kept being like, I don't know if these are contractions or not. And it's kind of like an orgasm. Everyone's like, oh, when you have it, you'll know. But I really don't think that's true, right at the beginning of labor. I think that sometimes you're like, am I just having cramps? Am I just not feeling well? I feel like you go through so much in pregnancy that it is hard to tell what the heck's going on. So yeah, I was having what I thought were contractions, but I couldn't time them. It was not clear when they were starting and when they were stopping, and I found that really frustrating because it's all everything is you go to the hospital when your contractions are at a certain time, lasting a certain amount of time, but I couldn't figure that out. So I was really nervous, and I was just excited and trying to figure out is this it? Is this not it? And then around 5:30 in the evening, I thought my water broke. Now, I think it was, I can't remember now, a day or two before I had thought it broke in the shower, a few days before, and I called the doctor, and he was basically like, no, I don't think it did. And so I was feeling stupid by that point, for thinking my water had broken in the shower. Please comment below if that happened to anybody else. So this time I was in the kitchen, and definitely some liquid came out. So I was like, okay, my water broke this time, we're going to the hospital. And I called the doctor, and he was like, you're a worried type of person, why don't you just come in? I definitely could have labored at home for a while, but he was like, you're just the type of person that I think would prefer to be in the hospital. And I was like, you get me, yes, let's go. So it turned out that we're actually not sure if my water did break at that point. They had to break it a little bit later, and then there was definitely a ton of liquid. So, but they said it might have broken, and because the baby was so low, not all the water might have come out. So I don't know what really happened, but we went to the hospital, and the contractions definitely started picking up, and I could definitely monitor them. So by 8:30, we were all checked in the room, waiting to go. They started in this sort of check-in, welcome kind of area. I say welcome, I mean not welcoming as a hospital, but I don't know, this first room that you go into where they say if you're really ready and if they're gonna admit you fully. So that took, I would say, almost 2 hours of them just like monitoring and doing like whatever the heck they do. And then they're like, okay, we're gonna admit you. And I was like, wow, like this is actually happening. Oh, by the way, when we first showed up at the hospital, they were like, my husband was parking the car, and they were like, what are you doing here? And I was like, I'm having a baby? Like, I don't know. Isn't it obvious? I'm hugely pregnant. But I don't know. So I always will remember that moment of being like, am I in the wrong place? Like, I don't know what's going on. You tell me, or this is where you go when you have a baby. Anyway, so they admitted us into the room and the contractions started really picking up. And this is something I do want to talk about because my whole pregnancy I was like, what do contractions feel like? Like, why is it so painful? Like, what could it be, And one of the classes that we went to, they said it's kind of like when you cut your finger, like you have a really sharp, painful incident, and your body reacts, you're like, oh my gosh, that hurt so much. Your body's not prepared for that kind of pain. But when you're having contractions, it's like a slower, more progressive pain that you have to kind of get through. It's not like when you cut yourself and, it's just like the shock and you're done and then it hurts after. I don't know if that's helpful for anyone, but like, I just thought that was interesting to think about. Like, that there's a difference in the type of pain. Anyways, so the pain, it was like you can't escape something coming from your own body. I just remember having this feeling of like wanting to run away from the pain, like just I wanted it out of the body, but it was so all encompassing and I couldn't figure out what to do with myself. And I had been to a class where they gave you all these tips and advice, like sit here, hold the ball, have your husband rub your temple, like all this different stuff. But in the moment I was like, oh, none of that is going to do anything. Like it's so intense. I can't describe. It's really, really hard to describe. But the best way I can describe it is it feels like your body is attacking. Like your body is just like, and you just want to be like, ugh. I hope that's helpful for some people. So around about midnight, which is about 4 hours after I'd been admitted, I asked for the epidural. Now, I went back and forth a lot, and I was like, well, should I wait? Shouldn't I wait? Like, what's the difference if I get it earlier or not get it earlier? And I still, to this day, like, couldn't get a clear answer about why you should wait or not wait. Like, I'm like, well, why don't you just get it as soon as you have any pain? Like, why go through the pain if you know you're going to end up getting it before you give birth? So this is my personal, like, non-medical advice on it. I think the reason to wait is because the epidural can have, not like I want to say side effects in a negative way. I mean, it can, but it's just like I don't know. It's like you have to lay down. Your body, I felt tingly from the epidural, like itchy and tingly and just like uncomfortable. And like you're getting pumped with narcotics. Is it narcotics or pain medicine? So like, do you want to be experiencing that for a really long time when you could be experiencing like the natural thing your body's supposed to experience? Does that make sense? So, and I'm going to get to this, but my goal for if I have next baby, which I hope I do, is to do it all naturally. And I'll explain why. So anyways, the epidural, it was fine. It took away all of the pain. Getting it was not fun. I mean, it hurt. I remember, like, you have to, like, hold a pillow and lean over, and you're in our hospital, the husband's not allowed to be in the room, so I was, like, alone with the nurse, and I was like, ow, ow, ow. But it wasn't at all as painful as the contractions, so, like, it was just no big deal at that point. I'm like, whatever. I just didn't really try not to think about the needle, and I never really looked into too much of, like, exactly how big it is and what they do, because I was like, whatever, I just don't want to know. So yeah, it felt like, this might freak people out, but I felt like they were stretching my spine to get it in. It was like you could hear these weird, like, noises, and I just felt like they were, like, stretching the cartilage or something. It was weird and it was painful, but honestly, like, it really took away the pain of the contractions, and I spent the next, like, 10 hours, I think, from midnight till about 5, 6 the next morning, 7 hours, watching Gilmore Girls. So I was binge watching Gilmore Girls on Netflix throughout the entire, like, end of my pregnancy, and I was on the last season, and I was like, I'm gonna get through this before the baby comes. And that whole night, I stayed up the whole night watching Gilmore Girls. I really couldn't sleep on the epidural because, again, I was like a little bit itchy and uncomfortable, but I was also just like so excited and wired about the fact that the baby was coming that I just couldn't sleep. Meantime, my husband's over in this like tiny little half sofa and he's like snoozing away the whole night. Also, there's a lot of like beeping and medical noises and nurses coming in all the time, so I don't know how people sleep during all that. I probably could have catnapped, but I just was so excited. So then another weird thing is my doctor had told me the night before, he's like, I think you'll give birth before 11 a.m. tomorrow. And what do you know? 10:53 a.m. the baby was born. So yeah, at about like 6 a.m. the next morning, things started to progress, and they had said that like, I don't remember exactly, but they wanted to give me Pitocin, and they wanted to break my water more if it wasn't broken. Like they said there was still water need to come out, and I remember not wanting the Pitocin. I was like, why do I need it? Like, why can't I just hang out without it, see what happens? And this again gets back to the epidural thing. It's like very confusing about when you should do stuff, and you don't know. All you know is what the doctors and nurses are telling you, and they're like, well, do you want the Pitocin? Like, we can wait. And I was like, well, why should I wait? Like, I just think a lot of the experience was just so confusing. So I did get the Pitocin, I did have my water broken, and very soon after that it was like go time to push. And the best way to describe this feeling is it really feels like you need to poop, and it feels like there's something back there, you just want to like push it out, but it really feels like it's gonna come out of your butt, which is the weirdest thing. But again, it's like people don't tell you this stuff, but that's where you feel it and you just really want to push. So I pushed. Also, one more thing about moving things quickly, they're always monitoring the baby's heartbeat, and anytime there's like a drop in the heartbeat, that's when they're like, okay, we need to speed it up, we need to get this baby out of here. And so that's kind of always the factor I felt during this whole process about why to move things along was to not endanger the baby. And I think that's something you'll see in a lot of like natural versus medicated births is the priority of the infant over the mother. And that's kind of a whole other topic video, especially in the United States. I could like a lot to say about that. But yes, so when I actually decided to do the Pitocin was because they said that the fetal heartbeat was a little bit low and they were a little bit concerned that the baby was in distress. So I was like, oh, okay, Pitocin, yeah, let's go. So anyways, 10:53 a.m., I literally pushed for less than an hour. Like, it was not a big, I don't say it was not a big deal, but I was like, I want this baby. I was like, I've been waiting so long to see this baby. I am pushing it out. So I pushed as hard as I could. Like, I mean, I wasn't concerned that I wasn't going to be able to push this baby out because I had this like super strength because I wanted to see this baby so bad. I waited so long and I knew if I pushed hard enough, it would come out. So I was like, let's go, let's do it. So the baby came out, they put him right on my chest, and I just like held him, and he started crying, and I was like, it's okay, buddy. I was like, I'm sorry that they did it, but you had to go out of that nice warm place and get all squished, and it's okay, and I love you, and it was just so sweet. And we didn't actually say his name until his birth, so it was really funny because we were calling him like little buddy, or baby boy, or little guy. And yeah, that was definitely like one of the happiest memories of the whole experience was just holding him. And I did try to breastfeed him like within an hour, which is a whole other story. So yeah, so they were like stitching me up and doing all kinds of stuff. I was at a teaching hospital, so there was like, this guy walks in, I've just given birth, I'm holding my baby, everything's like out and exposed, blood everywhere. And he's like, hi, I'm Dr. So-and-so, and I'm like, hello. And so he started stitching me up, and then my doctor's like, no, you're doing it wrong, and then he finished, so like, God. Anyway, so, yeah, so after you're done in the labor room, it was about, I would say, 2 to 3 hours, which sounds like a long time, but it goes by in like a flash. They move you to the recovery room, and this is where it gets weird. They take out the epidural, And at this point, the epidural like fades off pretty quickly. You have zero pain medication. So you've gone from being completely numbed up on anesthesia medicine, not feeling a thing. Your body's been ripped open, the baby's been taken out, and then they take out the pain medication. And you're like, you've gone from nothing to full-blown afterbirth pain. And right away I was like, oh my God. The woman's like, do you want Tylenol? The nurse, I was like, Tylenol? I got it. So I did take Tylenol right then, and they're like, it's normal, you've just given birth, like everything's fine, you make sure you can pee. And I did go to the bathroom and pee, and then they wheeled me into the recovery room. And this is where everything spiraled out of control and turned really bad. So if you don't want to hear negative stuff about birth, pause here, or stop here. So yeah, during the recovery, I just felt horrible. And I got worse and worse as the hours went on, and I just knew something was wrong. And what was hard for me was all the nurses and my husband kept trying to just calm me down and say, like, you're fine, you know, you just had a baby, it's normal to be in pain. But I didn't know, you know, it's my first baby, but I was like, something is wrong, to the point that I was on the floor, because I was in so much pain, I couldn't be in the bed, I was on the floor completely naked, hysterically crying, begging to go to the emergency room because I was in so much pain. And then everyone just kept dismissing me and being like, basically you're being over dramatic and this is totally normal, this is what happens, you just gave birth. So that was really, really hard for me, and I still have like horrible memories of that experience and just feeling so powerless. And that's my best advice, is just have an advocate with you. I mean, my husband is the best person ever. I wouldn't want anyone else there, but he didn't know, and he was just trying to calm me down when really I needed him to fight for me and tell the nurses that something was wrong. The other thing that was going on was all this like pee was like just coming out of me. Like I had zero control over it, and I went through all the like supplies that they have in the hospital for you, like the pads and stuff, because I was just like peeing through them all the time. So that was like the clue that something was wrong. So it took hours, and finally I saw, like, not my doctor, but like a doctor in training, medical student, and they thought I maybe had a UTI, or they thought maybe I had a tear next to my urethra. I mean, ugh. So they like were examining all this, and then finally they're like, we're just gonna put a catheter in you, you know, but whatever. I don't know why exactly they decided to do that, but they put the catheter in, and all of a sudden it filled up. Basically what happened was the epidural froze my bladder. So even though I thought I was peeing, I was really like spilling over. And if they hadn't done the catheter right then, my bladder could have burst, which would have been, like, I could cry just thinking about it, because it would have required emergency surgery, and oh my God, it just would have been horrible. I mean, it was horrible enough as it is, but thank God, you know, it ended up being okay. So I had all that, and then it's so crazy. Because I had all that pain and just the pain of like tearing and giving birth, I felt a lot of back pain. I thought I had bed sores for some reason. I don't know, you can't get those in a half a day in a hospital bed. But in my mind, I was like, I think I have bed sores. My back was really hurting, but it was so like low on the priority list compared to everything else. I found out months later that I actually fractured my spine giving birth. I'm still in physical therapy now. I have a 9-month-old. I'm trying to get better from that, but it makes me sad when I think about like all these things that happen, you know, and I hear things, because a lot of people just have a totally normal, fine time, you know, and I just think it's hard when things do go wrong, because you feel robbed of this like perfect, blissful time with a newborn. But what I will say is, from the beginning, my little baby was like the sweetest little baby. He was so good. My sister said like newborns just know like when the mom, you know, needs them to just be good little babies. Like it was like he knew, and he was so sweet, and like taking care of him was the best part of all of it. Obviously, but like I didn't want any help with him. I would really let anyone do anything. So I was like, you know what? I have to go through all this pain and all this experience. At least I get the baby. So I just loved like just being with him. I was up all night. I wasn't tired at all, even though, I was breastfeeding and pumping and all that, like every hour. I just didn't sleep basically those first 2 weeks, and I was in a crazy amount of pain. But yeah, I mean, obviously it made it all worth it. I ended up having to have that catheter in for almost a week, and that was really not fun because you're already so sore and torn up down there that like having like a plastic tube was just like the worst feeling ever. All I wanted was that catheter out and to not get an infection, which thankfully I didn't. And yeah, so yeah, well, that's labor and delivery story. So it starts out really good. It was totally easy and fine. I gave birth, and then that's when things spiraled out of control. And that's why I wanted to tell a story, because I hadn't heard any stories about things going wrong in recovery or after the baby was born. And so I just was so unprepared for it. I'd never heard of it. And I think if I had any idea that that was a possibility, then when I was in the hospital feeling so horrible, I would have been more of an advocate for myself and say, like, I know things can happen. Apparently this bladder freezing thing is like quite common, although none of the doctors figure out what happened for 12 hours, and this is one of the best hospitals in the United States. But yeah, so I think just knowing that the recovery part can have its own little struggles, and just to be aware and look out for them, like make sure you're paying attention to what's happening to your body. And number one, as everyone says, trust your instinct. If you think something is wrong, fight for yourself and make sure they come and take care of you. That's all, labor and delivery. Thank you for watching.